Welcome to this week's episode of Friday Special. I'm Waqas Majid Khan. Today we're talking about the statement made by the Chief of Army Staff, General Qamar Javed Bajwa. He said that we will reconstruct Pakistan brick by brick. And moreover, a very comprehensive and detailed press conference was conducted by the Chief of the ISPR, General Rafood. We'll be talking about that in some detail as well. Let me introduce my guests for the program. For the discussion, first of all, we have Syed Nazir Gilani Saab. He is the chairman of the Jammu and Kashmir Council for Human Rights. Then we have Ali Sarwar Naqvi Saab, former ambassador, regular on our show. And of course, another regular on our show, Ikramullah Bhatti Saab. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Gilani Saab, I'll start with you. The first thing that comes to mind when we talk about the speech that was made was regarding the escalation in violence on the LOC and the situation that is deteriorating in Kashmir day by day. You being representing Jammu and Kashmir Council for Human Rights, what do you think needs to be done further to highlight the Kashmiri cause, and where do we need to go, sir?
I think the most important thing is that India cannot continue with its war with the people of Kashmir, because no armies on earth have ever won a war against the civil population. That is what's happening in Kashmir, because we have highly militarized zone. As the United Nations report has said, that it's the conflict area where you have the maximum concentration of the army. So we have civil population pitched against the Indian rule, because they do not, they are challenging the Indian occupation in Kashmir. So the situation at this point is that India and Pakistan need to engage each other, because both are nuclear powers, and you know the consequences of a nuclear disagreement. It can be colossal on both sides. So India has to understand that it carries a higher burden of responsibility, whether it wants to build, reconstruct peace in the region, or it wants to have a very hot and volatile ceasefire line. Because the ceasefire line is between the Indian soldier and the Pakistani soldier. Both have been frozen by the UN resolutions not to exchange fire. But they do not debar me from going across and meeting my mother, as we had in Kartarpur, because over there you have the international border.
Right.
But here you don't have an international border, you have a ceasefire, which is pending to the point where the people of Kashmir will have a UN supervised vote. So it's a temporary arrangement between India and Pakistan. So India, as a secular country, as they say that we are, so Pakistan is also a country which is home for many religions. We have Sikhs, we have Muslims, we have Jews, we have Christians. So it's a home of all the religions, main religions on earth. So I think when we say that ceasefire line, then what comes to our mind is the plight of the people of Kashmir, because they have been through the worst kind of unprecedented atrocities that we have ever witnessed in the history of Kashmir.
Well, I'll come back to you, sir, but I want to bring this question to Naqvi Saab. Sir, Pakistan has repeatedly been asking India to engage with Pakistan on the issue of Kashmir and to solve it so that both countries can progress. And we've seen a constant negation of that effort by Pakistan, by the Indians. What more needs to be done, sir? We've also have the recent example of Kartarpur to show Pakistan's goodwill. The entire world is watching Pakistan's actions and also India's actions, but they don't seem to be making the kind of comments that need to be made regarding India's brutality on the Kashmiris.
Well, on the record, there is full substantiation of Indian atrocities. The latest is the UN Human Rights report on the massive violation of human rights in Kashmir. And before that, even the Indians have come out with documents which have shown Indian violation of the human rights of the people of Kashmir, and brutalization and atrocities and total disregard of their body and their
fundamental rights
of their life. Yes, their fundamental rights. I am referring to the Yashwant Sinha report, which was a report which is authored by some prominent Indians, and Yashwant Sinha himself was a minister in the union government and a very leading light of the Congress party. He has said that the Kashmiris are permanently alienated from India. All that is there. Now, what more needs to be done? We have done all that we can in bringing this matter to the attention of the international community. Every year, the Pakistani head of government or a senior leader like the foreign minister has addressed the UN General Assembly. We have raised this matter repeatedly in the UN Human Rights Commission. And we don't deliberately go to the Security Council, for example, because it is a highly politicized body. And there it will not be judged on merit, it will be judged on political considerations. And therefore, that's not the forum that we would like to go to, unless there is assurance of fair consideration of the problem. As to further action, I think we should continue to highlight the problem and continue to attempt to raise the conscience of the international community. B, we should also empower or at least encourage the Kashmiri people to reach international forums and to go to these forums. C, we have to emphasize the human rights violations. You see, many countries, and I have diplomatic experience, they think that this is a territorial dispute between India and Pakistan, and they say let them sort it out. But we have to bring out the human rights violations of the people of Kashmir. This is an international concern always, and the UN is committed to protecting the rights and life and liberty and property of all segments of society in all countries.
Right, but unfortunately it does not seem to be playing that role effectively. Bhatti Saab, let's also start with the speech that General Asif Ghafoor made regarding our journey in the past 70 years. It was a very comprehensive speech and he covered a number of areas. I'd just like to point out a few. He said that Pakistan has suffered due to a weak economy, lack of governance, flaws in judicial and education systems, religious extremism. All these issues are definitely very serious issues that have been confronted by the country. How do we go about setting the house in order, as they say, sir? That's the phrase that has been used a lot recently.
You see, in the previous 70 years, Pakistan has had better times. We have been a very stable, progressive country. People have been tolerant. There has been no religious, sectarian or ethnic issues. We have lived in peace for quite some time in these 70 years. But when you look at the previous 3-4 decades, unfortunately, all these ills have crept in our society. And essentially, I think it has been a consequence of poor governance, which has denied the people of this country their basic rights, right to education, right to employment, right to live in peace, right to protection of life and property. I mean, all this, right to merit, all this has actually fallen victim to poor governance. And of course, this in turn has eventually affected our economy. And the priorities have not been right. And now that we have yet another opportunity, now that we have a realization that we cannot allow things to deteriorate any further, I think there is a time to think, and there is a time to put our own house in order once again, and let's get to where we were and maybe become better than what we were at one time. And I think it is an opportunity to undertake soul searching. And of course, now that we have identified our ills, I think we should know our solutions as well, and we should implement those solutions and help make this country much more livable for its people, where they can live in peace, they can have protection of their life and property, they can have access to education, to health, to employment. so that Pakistan is a progressive, peaceful country, and we can of course shed our image, unfortunately, which has over a period of last 1 or 2 decades has spread in the world, that we are an unstable country, we are an unreliable country, that there is a lot of terrorism here. But on the contrary, we are the ones who have been subjected to terrorism the most, and unfortunately we have not been able to impress upon the world that we are not spreading terrorism. In fact, we are victims. And similarly, this was not our war. We were subjected to this war, and that the world ought to come out and help us in coming out of this situation, because we are not the ones who started all this. We were subjected to it.
Right, sir.
We helped the world, and it's time for the world to help us in eradicating all these ills that have crept in our society. And they were never here. The world knows it. It was there. I mean, the world knows how Pakistan has been in the past.
Absolutely, sir.
So they need to come to our help, and they need to understand what the reality is.
Indeed, sir. I hope that realization does sink into the international mind. Moving forward, sir, Gilani Saab, one of the things that the chief of the ISPR said, that ceasefire violations on the line of control and the working boundary by Indian forces have increased exponentially. 55 civilians were targeted in Kashmir, that is part of Pakistan, the highest in history. Indian forces are deliberately targeting civilians rather than engaging with the soldiers on the line of control and the working boundary. What kind of humanitarian law or international body will be looking into these violations? Is there somebody to raise their voice against the targeting of innocent civilians by the Indian forces, and that too across an internationally recognized working boundary?
The Indian soldier in the Indian part of Kashmir, Indian occupied part of Kashmir, remains under 7 restraints. 4 are bilateral, 3 are international. They came into Kashmir under the excuse that we will protect life, property, honor, and the territory. So they have killed over 100,000 people, so they haven't protected their life at all. Now they are destroying the properties as well. They have dishonored the whole Kashmir community. So the basic conditions that they had sought to enter into the state have been vitiated. The international restraints are under Resolution 21st April 1948 on their number, behavior and location. So Indian soldier at this point in Kashmir is an occupying soldier, because they did surrender the accession at the UN on 15th of January 1948 for a UN supervised vote. So they had an accession on 27th of October 47, but the same has been surrendered at the UN Security Council, as the ambassador rightly said, that not going to Security Council. There are various opinions on that. But what is important that Indian soldier does not understand, at this point in time, they are occupying force. Whatever they do, that constitutes a war crime. And the UN Secretary General has reported in his report that they are recruiting the minors in Kashmir for espionage, which is an obvious war crime. And treating the civilians the way they are treating is a war crime. They are cleverly putting Pakistan under pressure, because inside the state they have profiled the youth to reduce their number, to decimate them. And across the line of control they know that it is the Kashmiri who will be killed. So Pakistan would not be in a position to retaliate, because if they fire back, they will be killing the Kashmiri Muslim on the other side. So for India it is free for all. The lock, stock and barrel, they are free. No holds barred for them. But for Pakistan, yes, they have to observe restraint, because on the other side there is a female in the house, there is a school-going child, there is a teacher teaching in the school. So it is a very difficult situation, but Indians cannot get away, this Indian soldier I mean, from here, because they are committing war crimes without any doubt.
And sir, as you mentioned these war crimes, what is the United Nations really doing about these blatant war crimes that are being committed on a daily basis by the Indian soldiers in occupied Kashmir, sir? Isn't there some forum that can raise this issue? Why is the world sleeping on it for the past 70 years now?
You see, Waqas, let us be aware of history in the sense that international collective action and the will of the international community is not carried out the way it should. This was the problem of the League of Nations, which was created after the First World War. This is the problem of the United Nations, which was created after the Second World War. Therefore, Pakistan is part of the effort to reform the UN Security Council, to reform the UN General Assembly, and to bring in more substance to their work and to their focus and agenda.
Right.
Now, this is the background. Therefore, in that context, the UN is correct, doesn't do anything that it should be doing in regard to such massive violation of human rights. Even, I will give you the example, even in the case of the violation, massive violation of human rights of the Bosnian people by the then Serbian government, the UN was not the body that came into action. It was NATO and the Europeans who stepped in and stopped it. Then they involved the UN peacekeeping also. But the UN is found wanting. What happened in Rwanda and Burundi when there was genocide of the people of that African region. There are several such examples of massive violations of human rights. We have to highlight to the international community that this problem, whatever may be the political status of the territory, whatever may be decided about it, that is a subject that should be put on the side for the moment, because no consensus has developed, no international pressure has materialized. But the violation of the human rights of the people of Kashmir must be stopped forthwith. That is the message that Pakistan should be giving, because otherwise the suffering of the people from day to day, this is they have become a hostage to the difficult and uncertain status of the area. That is why they are being treated like this. They have certain aspirations. When they rise up for those aspirations, even the unarmed youth and even the women and the children, if they are raising slogans, they become subject of Indian security forces atrocities.
Absolutely, sir. My next question to Bhatti Saab is that why have the Indians been so successful in painting this as a terrorism issue as opposed to a full-blown, homegrown sort of insurgency, or the people of Kashmir standing against the oppression of the Indian army? Why is it that they are so effectively putting the onus on Pakistan that we are infiltrating inside and creating chaos, when it's actually the poor people of Kashmir picking up stones against the guns of the Indian soldiers?
Couple of reasons. Our viewers would recall that until 9/11, the struggle of the Kashmiri people was never termed as terrorism, and it was always freedom struggle and right of self-determination, and it was even accepted by the Indians as such, and there was no international protest or its identification as terrorism. But after 9/11, Indians got an opportunity to start to project as a cross-border activity, and any volunteers who had gone away from Pakistan were of course bracketed and branded as terrorists, and because of the total change of mood in the world, total change of understanding and appreciation and viewing this activity changed, and eventually Pakistan had to, at that time, if you recall, make a statement sometime in 2001, 2002 that the soil of Pakistan will not be used against another country, or words to that effect. And then of course, we also see the growing strength and position and influence of Indian diaspora, and the increasing importance of India in terms of its population, in terms of economy, in terms of it being a big market, and then in terms of its ability for the Americans to use it against China. Hence, the voice of the Indians, be it their diplomats, be it their expats, was heard in world capitals, in world media, because they were in influential positions. I am talking of the Indian diaspora or the Indian expats. So, their voice was heard and believed. So that is why the Kashmiris at that time lost out against the world opinion in terms of projecting their freedom struggle or freedom for the or their right of self-determination to them being branded as terrorists. And on the contrary, Pakistan was on the back foot, and it somehow could not fight against this onslaught and defend the viewpoint of the Kashmiris and the situation over there, their moral, their right, their legal right or their humanitarian right to self-determination. Hence, the world started to believe the Indian narrative more than what Pakistan was trying to project, and that is why I think the world has been not protesting or not have been eyeing the Indian atrocities in Kashmir the way it should have, until this recent report from the human rights body of the UN. Eventually, some truth has come out, and the plight of the Kashmiris has been identified, recognized, and I think this has been an opportunity for Pakistan to project that report and base its viewpoint, base its campaign on this report, and try and gain global support, be it in the think tanks, be it in the world capitals, be it in their parliaments, be it in the universities, in favor of the struggle of the Kashmiris, which is morally correct, which is legally correct, and which is a humanitarian issue. And I think that there is a big opening here, a big hope here, which I think must be availed of, and we must struggle in that direction.
We must generate momentum to bring that message forward. Gilani Sahab, under the BJP government, what we've seen is that Kashmir, of course, is an extreme case where we have over 700,000 soldiers oppressing the people of Kashmir. But what about the rest of India? We're seeing within India, in other states of India, people are being oppressed, especially the minorities, whether they be Muslims or Christians or even the Hindu Dalits, are being brutally oppressed by the BJP government. And under such a government and such a Hindutva fascist outlook that they have, what hope do you see in things getting better?
2 years back, a senior judge of the Calcutta High Court, he ran out and summoned the press. He said that I am ashamed of being an Indian because I am a Dalit. So I want to find a place where nobody would discriminate against me. So India is just like an onion, the civil society. It used to be a very noble civil society, but after the BJP came into power, it has turned vicious. And they lynch people, women are treated badly, and professionals who don't comply. The compliance is the order of the day. But Indian civil society is no more the society that one would have expected in the days of Nehru, when he structured the 5 principles Panchsheel. It's a very violent civil society, because if you go back to and relate it to Kashmir, in December 1931, the RSS volunteers in Lahore, it was One India at that point, they took out a procession against the Muslims of Kashmir and in favor of Maharaja and his forces, because Maharaja had killed on 13th of July 1931 Muslims for the first time. So rather than sympathizing with the people of Kashmir or Muslims of Kashmir, the Hindus in Lahore, not Hindus, the RSS volunteers. So from 1931 they have been waiting how to sneak into Kashmir. It was very unfortunate that they were ushered through by the PDP, because it was for the first time that they got a foothold in Kashmir. And now they are there and they are using all the tricks of the trade. Now they are ruling through the governor, and they The danger is that now Delhi rules the state. Even otherwise they used to rule, because if you have read the book by Dulat, who was former chief of RAW, he has said that we have been ruling Kashmir through IB from 1947. He also said that we need to float the propaganda that there is infiltration so that the army gets more budget. It is very well recorded in his book. So it's very difficult for the people of Kashmir, because they had difficult and tough life under military rule, but now they have the totally the Kashmiri civil society, they have been in a way disabled. The mainstream, even the Farooq Abdullah is crying, now the Mehbooba Mufti is crying, but it's too late, because they have committed a crime against the people of Kashmir by allowing and helping BJP to enter the state, have share in the government, and now they have gone as low as to the panchayat, because there was a boycott from the people, but people have won by 1 vote. So there is a mayor who got only 3 votes, but he is a BJP man. So he will be there for 5 years. So we have to consider the situation, whether we need to, whether we should leave the political scene quite free to Indian incursion, or we should find out a mechanism or ask the United Nations, because there has been, Pakistan way back did propose at one point that it is better that we have the United Nations force in Kashmir. And then there was a resolution on that, moved by Australia, United States of America, Cuba, United Kingdom, and there is that resolution. But we need to agitate the flag these issues. As you rightly said, that why isn't the world listening to us? Because you have to perfect the art of storytelling. Kashmiris have failed in this. Failed in the sense that we are giving lives, but we have failed to give meaning to it. It's for the first time that UN report has come through, though we are not that happy the way it should have been, but still it is the first report in the last 40 years. And what it proves, that India is not unassailable. We can dent into the ribs of India, because atrocities all over the world are atrocities. Rape all over the world is a rape. And blinding a child through a pellet gun is a crime. And as I heard from my colleagues, that in Bosnia, yes, the NATO came in, but the world opinion turned against the Serbs, because they crossed the line. Then world had no choice but to retain them, control them through the use of force. So to undo the Indian occupation, it may come to a point when the world, we don't know which part of the world it would be, that India will have to face the international community.
Sir, I also want to ask you regarding your opinion on Pakistan's efforts, because we have been trying to engage India over the past 70 years, time and time again, giving many goodwill gestures in order to solve this long-standing issue. But what we feel is that we are talking to or banging our head against a brick wall when it comes to even engaging with India. What do you think, or what suggestion would you like to make in order for us to achieve some kind of a breakthrough where the Indians are willing to talk to Pakistan or even just come to the negotiating table? As you've seen, Sushma Swaraj blatantly just said that we are not engaging with Pakistan. No matter what Pakistan does, bends over backwards, we don't care. We will not talk to these people. So what is the way forward in that situation?
I think India has to realize that Pakistan has a constituency in Kashmir, a very huge constituency. So that's an added plus for Pakistan. And Pakistan lives all over the world. The diaspora is everywhere. So India has to face Pakistanis, or the Pakistan, in Birmingham, in Sheffield, in Luton, in London, in Nottingham, in Washington, everywhere.
All over the world.
All over the world. So it's not that Pakistan is within the 4 walls over here. Pakistan has a dual role. One, Pakistan is a member nation of the United Nations. So it has a role in the Security Council, in the General Assembly. At the same time, it has a role under the UNSIP resolutions, under the Security Council resolutions. It is a party to the dispute. So it has a very important role. And that role cannot be eroded. So world knows about the role. It is how Pakistan advocates the case of Kashmir. It's not that world would not listen to Pakistan, because Pakistan is in the House of Commons, it's in the House of Lords, in the sense that people of Pakistani origin are there. So we are in professions all over the world. So it's not that we are only in Muzaffarabad, in Lahore, or in or contained in Pindi. So India will have to confront and face the Pakistani constituency world over. So it's for them and for the world community as well, because community relations might face a setback. If the situation in Kashmir deteriorates, it will impact life in London, life in Washington, life in Brussels. It's not that easy for India, and not that easy for the world as well, because if we are uncomfortable in London, so the London society is uncomfortable. If we are uncomfortable in Washington, having seen what is happening in Srinagar, Baramulla, Punch, Uri, Sopore, Alisha Gilani, an old man, 90 years old, is detained for the last 10 years. You don't detain a person for mere views, because he will go out and express his views. He will go to a mosque to offer the prayers. But if they feel threatened by an elderly, frail and fragile Kashmiri, then they should understand and prepare for the day when they will have to face Kashmiris all over the world.
Absolutely, sir. Let's also talk about the role of mainstream media in highlighting this particular issue. And then we also see that social media has been far more effective in bringing the voice of the Kashmiris, the oppression that they are facing, far more effectively than any mainstream media across the world, sir. What do you attribute that to?
Yes, this is very interesting, and you have raised a point that I have some thoughts on it, and I want to talk about it.
So,
you see, we are now in the 21st century, and this is the age of information. It is the age of technological leaps into the achievement of information at all levels, dissemination of information, and intercommunication.
As they say, sir, information is power.
Between individuals, societies, nations, yes, information is power. So, while countries like India, and particularly India, in the case of Kashmir, have been able to suppress a lot of information. And even when information has come out, it has come out after a gap of some time. Today, they are confronted with this situation of instant communication all over the world. A WhatsApp message that I send now to Brazil or to Los Angeles or to New York will reach there right away. So, this cannot be suppressed. No longer. It has gone on for too long, and they have been able to suppress to a large extent the awareness in the international community of what they are doing in Kashmir. And they are a repressive power. Look at how the apartheid regime collapsed. I mean, you know, they thought they can control South Africa and suppress the blacks indefinitely. But they could not do it. It had to collapse. So there comes a time when that whole situation in itself becomes such that it goes beyond the control of the repressive power or of this oppressive power to put a lid on it. And now I don't think they can put a lid on it. So it's a question of time. I mean, I can't say, I am not a soothsayer or watching a crystal ball, but I think it's a question of time when India will not be able to completely contain this problem, and the world will get to know of it, and they will have to do something.
I hope so, sir, and I hope that sooner rather than later. Bhatti Saab, we also have the reports of a very heavy military build-up by India on the LOC and the working boundary. of course, the ISPR has said that we are a nuclear capable state and capable of responding to any misadventure by India. But at the same time, do you see that as a very worrying sign that this build-up is taking place? What do you think is the agenda behind this build-up?
Well, in my view, the agenda is in fact the April 2019 election. And the groundbreaking of Kartarpur corridor has actually neutralized the Indian designs to quite an extent, but they are desperate that they need to continue their anti-Muslim, anti-Pakistan campaign to be able to win more and more votes. And for that, they need to have some sort of visible adventure to show to their voters that that Pakistan bashing is in hand, and that we have been doing something concrete, and hence this government needs to be voted in and supported. So, well, the amassing of troops on the border, it should worry our military planners, and they must take own defensive precautions. But I think the opening of Kartarpur corridor should discourage the Indians from any such adventure or misadventure. And because I think this initiative of Pakistan has gone on not just well in the world, but also in India, while their media, which is quite government controlled, has been quite critical of it, or in fact they try to trivialize it to the extent that they even said that it was our own initiative, we initiated 20 years ago, and it's only now that Pakistan has accepted this. But the fact remains that it has put them in a very serious dilemma. They are between devil and the deep sea. If they don't accept it, they're going to alienate the Sikhs. If they accept it and appreciate it, then they cannot be critical of Pakistan. So they have to manage it somehow. And in this framework, the option of having a military adventure with Pakistan doesn't figure out.
So that was going to be my next question to you, that considering the state that both the states are in, is war even an option? Can we even think of going to war? What about the rest of the world? Because any war would be a nuclear confrontation, and that is not something that is acceptable to the entire world, is it?
Certainly. You see, it's going to not just affect the two countries, it's going to affect the region and the world. And now that, Pakistan and India both are in SCO as well, where you have China and you have Russia, and I think they must be watching any such development on Indo-Pak border with a very, keen eye, because it's going to be equally worrisome for them. So I think now for India to undertake such a adventure and expect that it would go unnoticed and the world will keep its eyes closed or look the other way is not possible. So I think at some stage or the other, if the Indians continue to go ahead in that direction, there will be international intervention, because the world cannot just stand by and watch an escalation in a Indo-Pakistan military build-up, and God forbid it leading into a flash, and then of course resulting into very catastrophic consequences.
For the entire world, I might
Yes.
add, sir. Well, thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and as always, we like to say, please draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. That's all the time we have. Goodbye.